It has been about 10 years since this special came out, and I still cannot believe it even exists. The 50th anniversary special of Doctor Who was barely more than an hour long, was thrown together as last minute as you can really get, and somehow knocks it out of the f***ing park. Written by Stephen Moffat, who we won't be litigating today because I just want to talk about how insane this special is and what it has meant for Doctor Who. This special broke all of the rules in the fictional universe and in our own, and manages to deliver a character deep dive which also joins the two halves of the Doctor Who world together forever. So let's hop inside the Idle Scree dumpster, it's bigger on the inside, don't worry about it, and travel together back to 2013. In case you've forgotten, the 2005 reboot of Doctor Who actually ditched a lot of the classic Who in a necessary effort to modernize the show, nearly a decade after the Doctor Who movie failed to. No classic Doctors to welcome us back or commit to continuity, no classic sets or designs, and no looking back. Even the Doctor himself, he's now a war veteran instead of a simple traveller. As the series went on, we would see hints or references, maybe even a cameo from a classic character, but generally New Who was committed to its own identity. Even as the new show began finding reasons to reference classic for fan service or a quick joke, the classic era itself remained walled off on the other side of the Doctor's post-war trauma, and it's forbidden to show us exactly what caused this meta-divide in the narrative. Dialogue teasers and vague descriptions are all the narrative and the BBC can afford. So, imagine my surprise when...
What kind of idiot would try and steal a faulty TARDIS?
Doctor?
Yes? What is it? What do you want?
Excuse me, sir, what the New lore? Classic Doctor lore? Untouched Sacred Doctor's Origins lore? And our New Who current companion is involved? All classic Doctors making appearances? 1, 6, 4, 7, 3, 8, 2, 5. Imagine my surprise when the final scene reveals a brand new Doctor casting despite the current Doctor having not announced his departure. Unprecedented. Not only that, but our current Doctor recognizes him as someone from the past who we've never seen before. Impossible. The finale of a mediocre second half of the series suddenly catapults us into anniversary mode. The walls have been knocked down and we have the new interacting directly with the old. The anniversary celebrations have begun. Five months later. Not much has changed except the announcement that the 11th Doctor Matt Smith will be departing the show in an episode following the 50th anniversary. The BBC finally drops a promotion for the 50th. Not exactly plot heavy, but a spectacular franchise tribute with a hint.
What I did without choice, in the name of peace and sanity.
But not in the name of the Doctor. Now the time has come to face the choices I've made in the name of the Doctor.
Another month later.
I've had many faces, many lives.
That settles it. After nearly 10 years of New Who teasing, we're going to see the very moment which split this franchise clean in half. The audience blindfold will be lifted. And it starts on November 16th, when this video is uploaded to the internet.
I'm a doctor, but probably not the one you're expecting.
Oh my god, it's the 8th Doctor. The 8th Doctor who appeared once in a mediocre movie in 1996 and has literally never been seen again since. Every Doctor's journey has ended on screen except for 8's. He simply vanishes from our TVs, and 9 years later, the 9th Doctor shows up with no explanation. He is the meta divide in the show. It is at this point you may pick up on the incredibly subtle theme of bridging the old and new. The 8th Doctor finally gets his formal departure in a 6-minute short which he crushes, by the way. There are entire 45-minute episodes which don't ooze as much character as 8 does in 6 minutes. I also love that 8's TARDIS is a little dirtier and more banged up than when we last saw it, as if to suggest the world is just a bit more dangerous, a bit more banged up itself. I could make a whole other video on just this mini episode alone, but for now, we'll just keep to the important stuff. Did you notice that this rock in the middle has a hole carved into it for Cass's butt? For real, look where they place her. Butt in hole. I guess it was just more comfortable for the actor than lying on a flat surface, but I saw this on my first viewing and now I'll never unsee the butthole. Anyway, it's a tragic breaking down of the Doctor's character. The Doctor has to deal with an innocent, preventable death that his pacifism couldn't save. Cass couldn't be convinced by his ideals or swayed by his charm or innocence. His pacifism killed her because he allowed the Time War to escalate far enough that she would give her life to take a Time Lord down with her. This is the framing that the Sisterhood of Khan used to convince him to abandon all that came before and transform into a warrior. It's actually heartbreaking that 8, who was really quite chipper and upbeat, ends his life on such a low note. But finally, the regeneration we missed has come. But 8 doesn't become 9, he becomes John Hurt's Doctor at a much younger age, confirming 2 important things. That the Doctor had a secret life he kept even from us, and that he lived for the hundreds or even thousands of years that it takes to age a Time Lord. In 6 minutes, we have travelled back in time to the unseen end of 8's life, and we're left at the beginning of the audience's largest blind spot. The Doctor has entered the war.
The day he killed them all.
You leave me no choice.
The last day of the Time War.
Today, this war will end. No more.
The Day of the Doctor is a pretty fun but standard Monster of the Week plot, which is then interrupted and hijacked by the War Doctor. The special is fundamentally about the Doctor, and so he becomes the Monster of the Week. We get to examine him under this unique microscope for 77 glorious minutes. And this special runs with this Museum of the Doctor motif, as the Bat put it, which sees him framed in history and put on display, not unlike the artifacts and history which he is so often drawn to. It's not nothing that both of the previous Doctor incarnations are introduced through artwork in a museum. I'd like to talk specifically about the relationship the Doctor has with himself, and how he can't help but be himself, and how the events of this special strengthen him both as a character and as a living, breathing person of this fictional world. Our current day Doctor number 11 story starts with the British doing what they do best, finding a culturally significant object and taking it to a museum without asking first. The Museum of the Doctor motif is starting strong, and it's about to get stronger. First up in his personal museum, Time Lord artwork depicting the final day of the Time War. A sort of PTSD reaction to the painting leads us into the Time War as we've literally never seen it before. It's a harrowing, high-budget sequence featuring the most one-sided destruction I think we've ever seen in New Who. There's a fair criticism that the Time War was always described as something more mystic and incomprehensible, but personally I wasn't really upset with what we got. We're only seeing a small window into the final days of one particular location on a huge planet in a universe-spanning war, and as cool as the spectacle may be, it's ultimately a deeply personal story about the Doctor. Speaking of the Doctor, he has stolen the final, most destructive weapon the Time Lords had in their possession and has retreated to a far-off place significant to his childhood with the intention of ending it all. A small tidbit I really enjoy is the parallel between the War Doctor's exhausted begging
No more.
and Dalek Khan from Season 4, who, after experiencing the Time War firsthand, also decided and destroyed his own people. The Time War really put these enemies onto the same team. But anyway, there's a problem. The moment, which was the Galaxy Eater weapon that the Doctor planned on using, was so advanced and mystical that it had a conscience which projects itself to you and can judge you for what you're about to do with it. We find out that the Doctor actually planned on not surviving the Time War. It's glossed over, but it's a pretty heavy thing to learn. It recontextualizes
No more.
as less of a command and more like desperate begging for an end, whatever the cost. The moment decides that he will survive this, not out of mercy, but out of punishment. To understand what he's agreeing to, some rules are broken with Time Lord powers to unite the War Doctor with 10 and 11. Obviously, 10 and 11 flinching at War's movements suggests a level of discomfort or fear that is pretty upsetting to see, but what really strikes me is how the War Doctor acts. As soon as he is out of the war, he returns to being the Doctor, smiling, quipping, greeting the companions, and problem-solving. He can't help it. He was planning to die today, but was given a brief moment to step out of the battle, and suddenly he is a Doctor indistinguishable from the rest of the lineup. But the Doctors are incapable of seeing it.
I've been fighting this war for a long time. I've lost the right to be the Doctor.
The special really dives into forgiveness. The Doctor never dealt with the guilt or pain of his actions. He locked it away and disowned that life. Despite what he may say or do, the Doctor never found acceptance or forgiveness for himself, and it haunts him. The heart of this special is that the Doctor is forced to look back and be truly honest with himself. When 11 says he's moved on, he's lying. We know he's lying because
I've been thinking about it for centuries!
He's still lying to himself 400 years after the Time War. Literally. He is lying to his own faces in this scene. A Doctor who has moved on doesn't talk about his past with such venom. The War Doctor's introduction was punctuated by our current Doctor stripping him of the Doctor name.
Not in the name of the Doctor.
This is not what acceptance or forgiveness looks like. This is denial. But in this special, we're seeing the War Doctor almost exclusively in typical Doctor situations. Some people criticize the special for being fairly light on the Doctor's wartime actions, but I personally think that's the whole point. We have to see him as the Doctor because he can't. The self-reflection is cut short, but the War Doctor gets to do more typical doctoring, with some detective work, banter, and even finding a solution that his two older counterparts couldn't. What follows is a piece of fan service which I believe doubles as a metaphor for the whole special and the Doctor's personal journey. When we met the War Doctor in the special, it was inside the Time Lord's stasis art, on display in a museum. He stood alone among the fire and death. The three Doctors use the same stasis art to break into a vault, and we are given this. A repeated camera move into the fall of Arcadia, but this time, all three Doctors stand together. I love this so much, because the whole point is that they are the same person. The Doctor still stands alone, but now our new Who Doctors are taking their share of that action. I don't care if it's just for a moment. The 10th and 11th Doctor just fought in the Time War after centuries of refusing to acknowledge the Doctor who first did. Here they all stand in a historic piece of art in the Museum of the Doctor, a piece of history they wrote and will always be a part of. That's how I read this moment as a visual metaphor. The three of them use their screwdrivers in a way we've never seen done before. Something that can only be achieved by acknowledging that the screwdriver is the same despite its changed faces, as established in the lockup scene.
Same software, different face.
The best part is that choosing to engage with the Time War is the only way that the Doctors are able to then prevent a genocide peacefully. That's it. That's the whole show. That's the Doctor. He faces the fire to save as many as he can, and that's exactly what the War Doctor has been doing all along. 10 and 11 take the lead on preventing the B-plot genocide, but the War Doctor does his part, and with the biggest smile we've seen yet. This is the Doctor, standing in a vault full of artifacts from all of his adventures to the past and future alike, all now history to the series and to us. And seeing this smile just makes it hurt so much more when you remember that even he doesn't see it. Disowning the Doctor title started with 8's regeneration. For the War Doctor's 1,000-year life, he has refused his identity. He denied himself everything that he is. And after preventing a genocide completely peacefully, he sadly resigns himself to his warrior role. He believes that the best thing he can do is end the war, and that the regret and pain it creates within him will motivate his future selves to do better. That his role in the history of his own self is to be the one who suffers. The episode says it best.
Great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame, whatever the cost.
The whole world recognizes him as the Doctor. Only he is so poisoned by grief and guilt and denial that he insists on rejecting the persona. All of that disassociation and removal from the Doctor is what allows him to press the final button. The Doctor never could, but he is not the Doctor. Except he is.
You know the sound the TARDIS makes? That sound brings hope wherever it goes.
Yes.
To anyone who hears it, Doctor, however lost. Even you.
Hey look, it's another heartbreaking scene. The new Who Doctors arrive, and what is the War Doctor's immediate response? He sends them away. This is no place for the Doctor, and he is beyond the Doctor's help.
Go away now, all of you. Go and be the Doctor that I could never be. Make it worthwhile.
But after the events of today's special, the future Doctors are done pretending.
All those years burying you in my memory. Pretending you weren't the Doctor when you were the Doctor more than anybody else.
You were the Doctor on the day it wasn't possible to get it right.
This is more than a pat on the back and a thumbs up for the War Doctor. Both 10 and 11 put their hand on the button and commit to making the final push together. This is forgiveness. This is acceptance. Whatever happens next, our future Doctors have dropped their defensive disassociation. They agree to press the button because no matter which face they wore, they're all made of the same Doctor material. 3 of the same person, just like the stasis art. The Doctor will have always reached this point, and by pressing the button with the War Doctor, they are proving to him, to themselves, that he was always as much the Doctor as any of them. And that's all he ever wanted to hear.
Thank you.
With that, this episode's Monster of the Week is saved. The Doctor has become whole again. The future Doctors let go of their haunting denial and gain self-acceptance and peace. The War Doctor is given back his identity and his place in the Doctor's history. Together, as one, they embrace their past and future in the name of the Doctor and officially move on from the Time War with the final act. In the hardest decision of his life, the Doctor looks to Clara for guidance as the only one in the room who isn't himself. She tells him not to be a warrior as the War Doctor thought he was, or a hero as the 10th Doctor tried to be, but to just be the Doctor. Hearing the Doctor's oath spoken from 10 and War, our current Doctor makes a decision. We understand as viewers that the planet must burn to cause the events of the entire 7-series reboot of Doctor Who. So, imagine my surprise when the Doctor comes up with a plan to save it.
I have had 400 years to think about this. I changed my mind.
Did I mention that this special broke all of the rules? The Doctor already forgave himself and was prepared to close the gap between the original series and the reboot era once and for all with the one action we know must take place. What a beautiful, bittersweet ending. But why end it on a sad note when you've still got 15 minutes left and some rules left unbroken? This is the 50th anniversary and nothing is impossible anymore. Starting with the plan, seal Gallifrey in the stasis art. The sudden vanishing would destroy the surrounding Daleks and the Time Lords would be frozen in a parallel world. Lost, but safe. It creates the conditions of the New Who era without actually destroying the planet. Small bonus, but it also kind of explains why the Daleks keep showing up despite the Doctor thinking he used a Galaxy Eater to destroy literally all of them. I know there are other explanations, but we literally see one survive, so I've always thought that was a fun interpretation. It's an insane plan that even the Time Lords know is impossible. The setup is a third payoff to the running theme of self-acceptance. Just as the 3 of them used their shared identity to make impossible calculations in the prison and in the stasis art, they're going to do it again.
It's delusional. The calculations alone would take hundreds of years.
Oh, hundreds and hundreds, but don't worry. I started a very long time ago.
11 and 10 share this line to give the War Doctor the final word as the centerpiece of the special and the catalyst for this strategy. But he doesn't. Now, a little anecdote. This special was played in theatres on the day of the release, and that's how I saw it. Theatre culture in Australia is quiet. Besides a laugh in a comedy film, I've never heard much of any reaction from a cinema. But on November 23rd, 2013, this happened.
I started a very long time ago.
Calling the War Council of Gallifrey. This is the Doctor.
Screams, crying, primordial howling. The whole cinema erupted. People were jumping up from their seats. The elderly lady who sat in front of me was sobbing. A misdirect few, if any, saw coming. The whole plan came about because, as the Doctor said,
This time there's 3 of us.
3, not 12. Not the Doctor whose actors aged out of the ageless role. Not the Doctors who have been dead for decades. Not the Doctor who had such a severe falling out with the BBC that he refused to play even audio story roles until 2020. It's simply genius to make the glue which holds the 2 eras of Doctor Who together depend on all 12 of the Doctors doing their part to save the world. A nice touch to use the tinted monochrome hologram displays to hide the quality difference between the eras. I can't praise enough how well this was put together. You'd struggle to find a Doctor Who fan who doesn't absolutely love this. The Museum of the Doctor wouldn't be complete without all 12 on display. And just when the cinema exhausted their own breath, the special breaks another meta rule in an unprecedented move.
All 12 of them. No, sir. All 13.
Or as I experienced it, unbelievable. Even in a time travel narrative where one could conceivably go and see their future selves, it has never happened in Doctor Who's half-century life because it is so risky on a meta level. You can't show a future face too early because that actor might quit, or be unavailable, or any number of real-life problems which could blow up in your face for calling your ending too soon. But the stars aligned so perfectly for this special that our current Doctor was already on his way out, making this time-traveling bombshell possible. The Doctor from the future, our future, travelled back in time to show up on our screens months before we would even meet him. This special doesn't just reunite the show's past with its present, it catapults them into a conjoined future. Now, our final scene. Once again, we're in our museum motif. All 3 TARDISes displayed like exhibits, the wear of the paint telling a visual story of personal recovery, starting with War's raggedy TARDIS and ending with 11's clean pure blue box. The Doctors discussing the Gallifrey Falls art piece and debating on its meaning as one does at an art gallery. In order to maintain continuity, the War Doctor, and by extension Doctors 9 and 10, won't remember their heroic gamble. They'll be saddled with 1,000 years of war memories right up to the moment they stepped into that barn with the intent of ending everything. The special doesn't really elaborate on why, other than,
The time streams are out of sync. You can't retain it. No.
Personally, I always interpreted this as the result of losing Gallifrey. When the Time Lords were around, the rules of time travel were more flexible and magical. The Doctor says as much in the very next episode. This special was made possible by a Gallifreyan machine distorting time. With it now locked away in another universe, we return to the time travel rules of the modern era. No more rule breaking, no more crossovers. Another fun interpretation is that the moment chooses to take this victory away from him for the 400 years in between War and 11, teaching him a harsh lesson that will never leave him, even after learning the truth. It's fair to say that I shouldn't need to explain this myself, and that the show should have had a more thorough explanation, but in my opinion, the explanation we get doesn't undermine the special. I personally like specific details, but I don't think you could have watched the 8 years of New Who leading up to this special if you weren't willing to forgive some vague explanations. Our final crossover moments complete the Doctor's arc, which we began all the way back in the Series 13 finale with the War Doctor reveal. In that introduction, 11 takes the Doctor identity away from the War Doctor with such venom on his tongue as he says the word
Doctor.
Compared to how we end the special,
Doctor.
The difference in delivery of that one word is everything. The Doctor steps back into his museum exhibit and returns to his place in the history of the Doctor. The final gap is closed as the War Doctor regenerates into the 9th Doctor we met in Series 1 of the reboot. It's not nothing that he regenerates happier than most Doctors get to be in their final moments. Look at that smile, as if the 100 lifetimes of peace and happiness he was denied came rushing out, all at once, for the closer.
But at last I know where I'm going. Home.
So, what does this all mean? Well, the curator tells us that Gallifrey was saved and is trapped somewhere beyond time and space waiting to be found. The 8-year arc of mourning the lost planet is over. What does this mean for New Who, whose inception was defined by Gallifrey's loss and the grief associated with it? What does it mean for Gallifrey to have never been lost in the first place? What are the immediate and lasting effects of this episode on the show? We have married up the two halves of Doctor Who continuity and made the Doctor himself whole again. So, where do we go from here? Let's start with the biggest criticism I heard at the time. Does this undermine the Doctor's grief and performance over the last 8 years? Personally, I don't think so. The Doctor fought in the Time War long enough to turn from young John Hurt to old John Hurt. We know that Time Lord aging takes centuries. When the Doctor says things like,
I've taken lives, and I got worse, I got clever. Manipulated people into taking their own.
or
This is not a war. I fought in a bigger war than you will ever know. I did worse things than you could ever imagine, and when I close my eyes...
you can safely assume the Doctor has done more than the one thing we see him not do. This special only changes the final button press. He has centuries of violence on his hands at this point. To us, the loss of Gallifrey was everything, but to him, it was just the next thing after the centuries of all the other things he did to stop the war at any cost. In the end, he still has to live with the losses he suffered and the decisions he made. But that's just me. It might bother you that some things the Doctor say are now factually incorrect, and that's okay, but it's the truth and consequences as they know it. That's enough to change anyone for centuries. So the big question on everyone's mind, will this matter? Yes, immediately in fact. The very next episode relies on the new law to save the Doctor from what we now know was his final life. Side note, I adore the choice to make the final Doctor age into a first Doctor lookalike. There's something very sweet about his age revealing the daft old man he's always been but never shown since the first incarnation. But on a broader scope, also yes. The show post-50th is full of classic Who, on a scale never dared by New Who pre-50th. The embarrassment of being based on a show famous for being goofy and getting cancelled has been washed away with unashamed pride and passion for the show's long history. At the time of writing this script, the newest Doctor Who episode features classic companions and classic Doctors. The 11th Doctor's final episode calls back to and makes canon the 5 Doctors anniversary special.
Seal of the High Council of Gallifrey nicked it off the Master in the Death Zone.
The 12th Doctor's final episode doubles as the first Doctor's canonical final outing that we didn't even know happened for 51 years. A willingness to so directly tango with the classic series and all of its cheap props and silly costumes like this would have been unthinkable in New Who's early years. Even the Daleks were designed to feel more like a tank than a silly monster, and since the 50th, we've seen the classic designs reappearing. I could go on for hours about the contrast between pre- and post-50th, but I'm nearing my word count, so let's move on to the conclusion.
It has been an honor and a privilege.
The Day of the Doctor is a miracle. Low budget, low runtime, high risk, high reward. It's an event which permanently bonded the two halves of the show together after they had been so intentionally and carefully separated. It's a Monster of the Week story which doubles as the biggest introspective deep dive on the Doctor that we've ever seen. For a character who relies so heavily on mystery, this special exposed his most private moments and inner turmoil. It's equal parts plot twisting, rule breaking, law rewriting, and a love letter to every single generation of Doctor Who fans. As I wait for the as yet unaired 60th anniversary specials, I can't help but think of the colossal impact of this 77-minute masterpiece. The show was never the same after the Doctor first regenerated into a new man. It was never the same after the reboot erased large pieces of the classic series. It was never the same after the 50th anniversary broke the Doctor down and put him and the show back together.
Gallifrey, stand!
But for now, for this moment, I am the Doctor again. Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's the Bird here, getting to the end of my script and realizing I didn't write an outro, so we are just going to freestyle this. If you liked this and would like to see more Doctor Who content, let us know because I could definitely talk about this show literally forever. I'm serious, try me, I'll never stop. If you made it all the way to the end of the episode, mention Paul McGann's name because he deserves justice and they've got that Disney Plus money now and they definitely need to give him his own show before it's too late. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more media analysis, hit that bell so you actually get notified because that's the way YouTube is and we love it and it's perfect. A special shout out to everyone watching this live on the live premiere. Hello everyone. We premiere all of our videos live now, so if you'd like to come hang out with us and have a chat with everyone while watching along, be sure to keep an eye on your notifications and you can follow us on Tumblr for additional notifications and little extra video bits that don't make it to YouTube and some behind the scenes stuff. It's really great. Anyway, thanks again for watching. If you're still hearing me ramble, I'll see you guys at the next one.